Welcome back to another installment of the Intensive Car Unit. In this episode, we're going to be going over the brakes, the hubs, the rear suspension, and some other key components that we're actually going to utilize off of the Maserati. Now, I want to thank you guys for your continued viewership, because without you guys, this whole process of financial suicide is really kind of moot. And let's be honest, you're here to watch me struggle and headbutt some walls in the process for your entertainment. So what do you say we cut the chatter and get to work, right?
Okay, so let's talk about some of the choices on why I want to run the Maserati brakes, wheel, hubs, rotors, ABS system, and stuff like that. Before I get going too far, I just want you to look to see how big these rear rotors are. I mean, they're absolutely massive, they're designed for a 4,000-pound car with a really long wheelbase. That'll translate over really well to allow me, with the higher downforces that I want to run, as well as the higher power packages on the FRS, that's going to really give me a good opportunity to help slow that car down when I'm trying to make a braking zone at 140 miles an hour, whatever that speed may be. This car also has 4-piston rear calipers and 4-piston front calipers. Again, for me to buy something that will allow the use of that level of performance, I would be in it for a really pretty penny versus just trying to use it off this car. So we'll see if that bites me in the butt later. More than likely it will, but again, this is my attempt at financial suicide for your guys' entertainment. A couple other things I want you to think about too is, because this car is 4,400 pounds, it has very large wheel bearings. Some of the guys that I race with, they run an FRS, they're running 285 square around the car. They had to notch the frame pretty heavily and other stuff, which again, I'm going to be doing something similar. But they told me that they're wearing out axles, they're wearing out wearing out axles, they're wearing out the wheel bearings and other consumables at a higher rate because they're pulling 1.6 to 1.8 G's in cornering. And by me using something from a 4,400 pound car, I'm hoping that will give me the opportunity to avoid that disaster of always trying to find something that can handle those cornering loads, those braking loads, etc., by going with something from such a heavy car. So yeah, that's my hope and plan anyway. So we'll see if it actually pans out or not. Alright, so let's get this rotor off. Some of you will notice it uses regular hardware instead of those stupid Phillips head screwdriver bits. There we go. Rotor's off. Drum and hat design, which means your e-brake is controlled by a drum design. This one, comically enough, is missing the entire front leading edge, but it's an e-brake, so it's not that big of a deal. So there you go. Okay, so let's talk about drum brakes real quick. This is a shoe, and it was used on a lot of older vehicles with the braking system. You'll hear drum brakes versus disc brakes. This has 4-wheel disc brakes, but it has what's called a drum in-hat design, which means the emergency brake activates inside of the actual rotor assembly itself. So this is not an actual braking component in terms of a conventional system, meaning when you apply your brake pedal down, it still uses the hydraulic pressure. This is only when you set your parking brake or your emergency brake. Drum brakes are very mechanical, meaning there's a lot of little moving pieces inside. They've got springs on each side holding these on. There's an actuator up here. Down here is the spring assembly with the adjuster and all that stuff. And this is under some pretty high tension, So I always recommend wearing eye protection when you're doing something like this, because I've actually taken a pair of pliers into my safety glasses when I was doing one of these jobs a while back. So. Let's go ahead and look at one of the other design choices that I'm not really happy with, so to speak, and I feel like it's kind of silly. See if I can get to zoom in right there and get some better quality. Yeah, so this piece right here is attached to your lower control arm on this vehicle. It is a stud through and through, and they put a nut on here. And that nut, there you go, you can see a better angle of that right there. That nut has an eccentric on there, so that's how you adjust your toe, or sorry, not your toe, your camber. And the problem is that if you look right here, that's the amount of space you have to work with. It's not long enough that I can actually get anything in there. You can put a wrench on this side to help break this thing loose, but I tried doing it last night, and a 10 millimeter on that was flexing pretty hard before that even broke loose. And it looks like the previous person who worked on this put some red Loctite on there. So I've got this neat little tool, and this is for lack of a better word, it's called a nut buster. Insert your jokes here if you would like. And I'll show you what it does over here with another one. So it'll go on like so. Let me center that. It'll go on like so, and then this tightens up. That tightens up onto the actual nut, and as you turn this while holding this piece flat, it drives this hardened steel thing into the nut to actually split it. So that's what I'll be doing, so I can save this $50 stud. Let's talk about things that I'm too dumb to figure out sometimes, or in this case I actually was able to figure out. So this is the stud that I was talking about. This end was over here, as you can see that one's still in there, and this end is still in it. Well, come to find out, it was actually, let's see if I can turn it by hand in front of you, left hand threads, not right hand. So I was just taking a look at it real quick and figured out, I was like, you know what, maybe, let's see if I can get to focus on it. Maybe if I turn it the other way, it'll come loose. And it actually did. It came right out, no problem at all. So once I did that, it was done. I pulled it out, so now I'm ready to pull these control arms out and all the assembly. So here it is. Alrighty, let's take a look at this thing real quick. This is the torque tube out of the ToyoRati Quattroporte that you just watched me pull out. Now, the key with this that I want you to look at is, this thing is steel and it is thick. The flange here is probably 1/3 inch thick. Showed you this already. I'm guessing it disassembles from this side out, but I just want you to look at how freaking beefy this thing is. Right on. All the way through there. And this is what they use to transmit power from the clutch assembly. I'll show you where that is. It's all hiding right up inside of there. I've got to pull this clutch housing off first, but once I get that done, I'll snap another video and yeah, we'll be rocking and rolling.
As we begin to wrap up this episode, I just want to go over some of the things that we've actually accomplished. We've pulled out the rear subframe, we've removed the rear suspension components, we've also gotten the brakes and the torque tube. We've talked about the torque tube, some of the brake designs and stuff like that, as well as we laughed at my idiocy, which honestly is not that difficult. I'm a pretty easy target. I mean, really. Now, with that said, the next episode is going to be where the really fun begins. That's when we're starting to pull out the front subframe, the front braking components, the suspension components, and most of all, the engine. So please, stick around. It's about to get really fun. In this episode, we're going to talk about... We're going to be taking off the lower control arms. The process would not be nearly as entertaining. Now, with that said,